Welcome to Talking Pictures. My name is Christian Genzel. I'm a filmmaker and film journalist from Salzburg, Austria. Talking Pictures is a podcast series in which I talk to the people who made some of my favorite movies. Today's guest is Irish filmmaker Enda McCallion, and our interview was prompted by his involvement in the 2005 horror film Doom starring The Rock, an adaptation of the influential video game by id Software. Enda was attached to the project in its initial stages and during pre-production, but was then fired and replaced by Andrei Bartkowiak as the new director. Here, for maybe the first time, Enda talks about his experience developing Doom and explains what happened during pre-production. And he also gives us a glimpse of what his version of Doom would have looked like and what remains in the film. Enda McCallion originally garnered attention as a director of very unusual, daring, funny, and often subversive commercials. His best-known work is the Judderman commercial for the Metz alcopop drink, shot in a silent movie-inspired fashion and featuring a strange creature, the Judderman, luring a hapless wanderer deep into the woods with a Metz drink. Other notable commercials include two edgy spots for Gervais, featuring a lesbian couple with one girl torturing her lover by denying her access to the Gervais ice cream, or a McDonald spot depicting a group of aliens ready to attack humans coming out of a McDonald's restaurant because, as they say, they taste better afterwards. Enda also made spots for companies like Nestea, Fanta, Citroen, Renault, Opel, Samsung, and he directed one of the most lavish commercials ever made, the Ryder Cup 2006 for Allied Irish Bank, which was shot on over 20 locations with hundreds of extras. Enda also created a music video for Nine Inch Nails, Deep, and a few years after his Doom experience, he directed a horror film called Hit and Run, an intense low-budget film which displays the same dark sense of humor and visual pizzazz that could be seen in his commercials. In our interview, Enda moves beyond Doom to discuss his style and his approach to storytelling and directing. He shares anecdotes about several of his projects, and he talks in depth about several projects which never came to be and some which are currently in development. My interview with Enda McCallion was conducted in connection with our German language podcast Lichtspielplatz. So if you speak German, please visit lichtspielplatz.at and check out episode number 71, which features an in-depth discussion of the two Doom movies. Also make sure to listen to my conversation with Doom screenwriter Dave Callaham and my interview with Tony Giglio, the writer and director of the second Doom movie, Doom Annihilation. If you enjoy my interviews here on Talking Pictures, please consider heading over to patreon.com/talkingpicturespodcast and supporting the production of new episodes. And make sure to check out our other interviews on our website, talkingpicturespodcast.com. So without any further ado, here is director Enda McCallion.
I'll jump straight into Doom.
Okay.
My year of Doom in 2004/5. I was first contacted by the producer Lorenzo de Bonaventura, who was then working at Paramount Studios, and they had finance from Universal Studios to make the film. I was very aware of the game. I loved the game. I thought it had really powerful visuals, and I thought, okay, there's a certain darkness to my vision that I thought I could really bring to this. I didn't realize that it might become a little too dark too quickly, and they mightn't like my take, and they got rid of me very, very, very quickly. I'd done loads of meetings. We had cast the film. I had nothing to do with Dwayne Johnson. I don't dislike the guy. I don't particularly like him either, but he was cast in the film. I met him once, and I was really surprised that this 6'5" man comes out with bodyguards. I was like, oh my God. And here I'm like 5'9" on a good day, This guy is like, towering over me, and then he has bodyguards with him as well. I'm like, what does he need bodyguards for? But anyway, that's another thing. So I met him once, nice guy, very professional man, as we all know, and just was never really fond of him as an actor, but that's aside. So the idea was we were going to Prague to build these massive sets, shoot some on location, shoot some on sets, all built in the studios in Prague. And I went there in May 2004. with the idea of starting shooting in February 2005. An awful lot of prep to be done. Went there with a cameraman, my production designer, just my own central crew, the people I normally work, the people I trust most.
Mm-hmm.
And, here's where it gets a bit strange. I basically met one of my heroes. He was there to shoot a film too. That was Roman Polanski.
Wow.
And we started to party together. And Roman Polanski knows how to party, man. Big time, even more than I did. And I like to party too. And we went crazy. And I started becoming very irresponsible. I wasn't turning up for early morning meetings because I was out. A 7:30 a.m. meeting in the morning was ridiculous because I was still out drinking with Roman or whoever else was around. I have an encyclopedic knowledge of his films, and I was able to talk to him, like put on the accents of some of the people in cul-de-sac, like there must be a telephone at the end of these wires somewhere. And he was going, I know that. What is that? And I go, that's something you wrote in 1963. And he goes, oh, right, yeah. So we had a great time. But the day came when they were getting fed up with my basically lack of discipline and a lack of professional, here was a $95 million film.
Mm-hmm.
With a director who was being, and I'm the first to an irresponsible, unprofessional, and just out to have a good time.
Mm.
And the line producer and I just did not get on at all. Mm-hmm. He has since passed away, and my beautiful grandmother always said, Enda, you never speak evil of the dead, so I won't speak evil of him or anybody else. But we just didn't get on. And we basically, crashed heads from day one.
Mm-hmm.
We were really, everything I wanted, he wouldn't give me. Everything he wanted, I wouldn't give him. And it was just very unhealthy. So I was working with a storyboard artist, and this was the first time when my vision for the film certainly got out of line with Universal Studios' vision for the film. And we had agreed it was going to be an R-rated film. The game is R-rated.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked already about, it's very important in Hollywood today to have a captive audience. Usually a sequel is the best way to do it because the first film worked. But in this case, it was Doom, a game that was hugely, hugely popular, right? It was massive at the time, right? And they were just coming out with a new version of the game just after the movie was going to be released. So I kept saying to the studios, and I was successful to a certain point, that we have to stay faithful to the game. We have to keep that violence that it's known for. It's a violent game, at the Columbine shootings, they played Doom before they shot those kids. I mean, we can't deny that. It's a very violent game. So I was working with a storyboard artist, and we were designing the title sequence, the opening title sequence.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I want to keep this really, really dark. And he goes, how dark? And I go, well, this will sum out how dark I want to go. The Doom typography is very specific from the game. So I goes, we'll open up with the D and the O, the first O from the game. They're almost like these huge pieces of metal cut out, and we'll keep the M at the end. So we're now missing the second O. And I said, for the second O, I want a woman, a scientist lying dead on a white floor. And she's completely dead, but her baby has been born, and her baby is still attached to her umbilical cord and is crawling around her, making an O out of blood. And they were like, what? paging the local doctors. They go, are you crazy? And I go, no, I think it's been faithful to the game. There's a lot of blood in the game, and I think it's dark. Yes, it's dark. I'll admit that it's dark, but that's why I want to start the film off. They said, you're mad. And I go, maybe, but I believe it's the right way to start. And they then immediately just got the main, Lorenzo came in from LA. The executives come in from Universal and decided that he really is, apart from the partying and this crazy idea for his opening titles, he's insane. And they asked me to pack my bags and leave the next day, which I did.
Wow, wow.
Yeah, I know.
Wow. And I think you're right, because the game has such a, like, almost a punk rock edge to it. The way it's so ultra violent, the way it's so in your face, picking up a chainsaw and mowing your way through a row of enemies. That sort of idea, right? I mean, there's a very dark humor underneath that, a very, very provocative idea, basically.
I'm kind of smiling inside here, Christian, because I'm thinking you sound like me at the pre-production meetings. That's exactly the stuff I was telling you. You cannot deny the potential audience what essentially is the essence of the game, which is that humor and that violence. You cannot deny them that's your audience. These are the people who are going to pay the $10 to see the film. Why deny them that? But they wouldn't listen. They go, no, 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 no. That's NC-17. You're going into our X territory. You can't. We can't go there. And I suppose for $95 million, you don't want to make an X-rated film.
Yeah, I guess.
So yeah, I put forward my best arguments, and I did my utmost to try and convince them. But at the end of the day, Hollywood's a very safe place. And, I'm labeled as being very, very difficult there only because I challenge people's opinions. Now, I would say, I really mean this, that I don't want to be difficult. I don't want to be known as difficult. I've worked an awful lot, and the general consensus is I'm not a difficult director to work with, but I do want to fight for what I believe is right.
Mm-hmm.
And I will do that. I'll fight all day and all night. But what I'll do is I'll say, I think you're wrong, but if you listen to this idea, so I'll give them an option to listen to it. I just won't say, no, that's shit. No, not doing that. Get somebody else. Bye. I won't do that. I'll say, no, I disagree with this idea or this scene, and here's why. But here's an alternative I suggest. So I try to be as reasonable as I can, but I'm labeled as difficult. Oh, he's really difficult. My agent has told me, and what did you say at that meeting today? They think you're really difficult. And I go, I didn't say anything. I just told them that I was unhappy with one scene in the film, and I think we could make it better if they listened to this idea. So, so it's a difficult time to work in if you're passionate, and you really believe in something and you want to fight. I mean, I'd rather die on my knees, or I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. That's what I've always said.
Yeah, and I mean, they'd hire you for a certain point of view, for a certain aesthetic, for bringing a vision to the project. So yeah,
and they pay a lot of money too. So so you'd think, I mean, and also they gave me the job because of the tone of my work. I directed a lot of music videos for Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson. It was, the stuff I did was pretty hardcore. It was, like you say, it was punk. It was punk, and my commercials are like the hardest end of the commercial spectrum. I get them if they're mad and out there and almost borderline banned. I get them all, which is a great place to be.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of your commercials, and from those commercials, I sort of tried to. I mean, I could almost see the tone that your Doom version would have had from some of them, from the Judderman commercial, from the Mad Cow commercial. From the I forget the brand, the ice cream commercial with the two girls.
Gervais, I have a good story about that one, right? We did the first two, and the client is Nestea, who was in Switzerland, a very, very, very conservative client. And he got a letter from the Vatican to say that we were promoting lesbianism. And they weren't happy with it, right? So the third commercial, which we never did, was the same two girls following the Pope mobile around and rubbing ice cream up against the outside of, and the Pope inside trying to lick it off, right? But needless to say, the client just said, no way, you're not doing that. But he got a letter, Nestea in Geneva got a letter from the Pope's private secretary saying, Pope, it was Pope John Paul at that time, it was, yes, and said that the Vatican are very, very unhappy with the way you're promoting lesbianism.
If you manage to do a commercial that really gets people to explore their sexuality, that would be so amazing. But
I mean, I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was great, So I did my utmost to try and convince the advertising agency to make the third one with the Pope mobile. But, the client just says, I'm not paying for it. It's that simple. Just no way. So that's my Doom story. Now, do I have any regrets? No. Do I like the film? No, but
Hmm.
that's not sour grapes. I wanted to like the film. Again, another problem I had is that a very young writer wrote the draft that I first got.
Hmm.
A guy called David Callahan, an excellent draft. But the studio felt they needed to hire an established writer
Hmm.
to give it the final polish. Okay, I met him on a Friday night, and he had to have it in a Monday morning, and he was complaining that he would have no time to do it. So the next night, David Bowie was playing in downtown Los Angeles, and I went to see him. And I looked around, and there was my writer who was complaining he had no time to write at David Bowie, bopping around the place. And I said, "Hey, man, how you doing? I thought you were busy." And he goes, "Oh, my son knows more about Doom than I do. He's writing it."
Okay.
No, he was getting paid like 100 times more than the original writer got for writing the entire script. It was really that annoyed me. And also, he knew that he made most of his money from rewriting or polishing other people's script.
Yeah.
So he was not going to rock the boat, man. He was not going to rock the boat. And he makes his money from polishing other people's scripts, and he knows that. So he knows just how to satisfy the studio heads.
Hmm.
And therefore he'll take the easy, safe way out. Now, he softened that poor guy's script so much in one weekend, it was just irreversible at that point.
Hmm.
So there were a number of things that were quite annoying about it all. Some guy get paid $1 million for a rewrite of a
Yeah.
script and then just turns in the most obvious thing.
Yeah.
He's given notes by the studio, and he addresses every note and makes sure the studio has been addressed and they're happy.
Hmm. Did you have any input into the development of the script?
Yeah, I had quite a bit actually. Yeah, I had quite a bit. When I started working with the first writer, David Callahan, we talked about it a lot. And, I remember quite a few scenes being juxtaposed and moved around, and then talking about some of the characters. I had a huge input into the first person shooter scene at the end.
Hmm.
Which if you could only see, and I will do my utmost if you want me to send it to you, it is really quite brilliant because it's
Hmm.
totally in keeping with the game. Unfortunately, the studio cut it up and put on heavy metal music to it. It's supposed to be one continuous take,
Hmm.
which we did, and we had a brilliant post-production supervisor, a guy called John Farhat, and
Hmm.
he did an outstanding job. And it was put into the film, and then the studio said, "No, we got to cut this up, jump cut it and put on metal music onto it and destroy it." But I can get you a copy of that and send it to you if you'd like,
Hmm.
just to see how good it was. And that's the closest to my vision of the film that we got.
Hmm. Yeah, I would very much like to see that. I mean, the sequence in the finished film is still it's basically the one moment in the film where it dares to be different, where it
Yeah,
dares to sort of to let loose and just try something and try to capture that spirit,
yeah.
right, of anything goes.
It
So,
was the original version is a lot better. Now that's the one thing I had most input into, the
hmm.
first person shooter sequence. I with the VXX supervisor and the storyboard artist, we worked it out to minute details. So if I can get you that sequence, I promise I'll send it to you, and
Hmm.
you'll see just how accomplished that's, and that encapsulates perfectly my vision for that film.
Hmm.
And it didn't surprise me that they cut it to shreds in the end.
Would you have used more of those sequences, like the first person point of view?
Yeah, there were obviously the big one was at the end,
Hmm.
but there were one or two other smaller sequences in the middle of the movie as well, just to remind people this is Doom.
Hmm.
And they were very, very beautifully made. I must say the post production company were in London, and they did a fantastic job, and it really looked quite amazing. So I will get it to you, Christian. I promise you that.
Hmm. Yeah, that would be great. I'm very curious to see that. Does any of your other work on the film, does that survive in the finished film? Some of the sequences, some of the concepts?
The only thing that survived in there is all the sets. Those were I had to sign off on the sets early because I was there long before they hired the next director who came in. He had no time
Hmm.
at all. I mean, he was taking on 2 weeks before. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm back. I'm very good friends again with Lorenzo de Bonaventura. I went and met him afterward and said, "Hey, I let you down, man. I partied too hard. Yes, I didn't listen to you when it came to the vision of the financiers of this film. Yeah, all the set design is everything, every location and every piece of set design there, and most of the visual effects are all stuff that I'd signed off on because I had to earlier on. I mean, to give you an idea of my irresponsibility and my lack of professionalism was, we would bring the stunt guys in and say, well, how many times do you want to do this car crash? And I would just say, I don't know, man. How am I supposed to know? I don't know how many takes it's going to be. Just bring me 20 cars and we'll do 20 times. And that's not good enough. You have to be more precise, especially if there's a budget to work to. I go, I don't know. The stunt drivers can do it as many times as they like, until they kill each other or we have no more cars left. That is not the way to prepare a film or a music video or a commercial. So I was being very stupid, So if you look at it, the lighting to a certain extent, I mean, all these films are a cheap ripoff of Alien, That's essentially what they are. And Alien is a great film.
Yeah.
It really is a fantastic film. And no movie made sense has come anywhere near the tension of that film. Ridley Scott really knew what he was doing back then. The lighting is fantastic. The set design is fantastic. But no, it doesn't come anywhere near that. And I remember before we went to Prague that Lorenzo's got a nice big home theater in his home, with 60 seats, and we went over there with the popcorn and all that stuff. And we watched Alien and then James Cameron Aliens, which is, it's a little more James Cameron-y, but it's still a decent film, the second one. And so that was obviously the way they wanted to go. And I was just going too dark. Yeah, then, I came back to Los Angeles. The first thing I did immediately afterwards was a Nine Inch Nails video, which allowed me to get out of my darkness. Because Trent Reznor's a really interesting guy, He's like, the first conference calls, he doesn't want any producers, any managers, any record executives. He said, I want to talk creativity only. So him and I would talk about various ideas and body parts and body fluids and all this stuff, and it was very interesting, very interesting. So all the darkness I had in me, I managed to actually just let go when I did that thing for Deep. It was called the song Deep. And then I did a Marilyn Manson video, which is pretty crazy as well. And that was a lot of fun. These guys are really cool to work. They're incredibly intelligent men, you know what I mean? And they really know what they're doing. Like Trent is an amazing producer. Like Nine Inch Nails is him entirely. He records all the tracks. He produces them, he engineers them, he mixes them. And then when he goes on the road, he hires a bunch of musicians, but he does everything. He's a trained pianist. He's a brilliant guitar player. He can sing. Brilliant on all sorts of keyboards, especially with experimentation on like the Moog keyboards and the bizarre. He has a collection of the craziest instruments, and he does everything himself. He's like a one-man band, just like Prince was before him, and he's pretty amazing. It was good to do that, and then. But I was still desperate to make a film. And then, fortunately, MGM came along with a film called Hit and Run, which I did then after that, which was unrated, but it was fun. Oh, my God. Mr. Preparation. I love it.
Yes, it has a 16 rating in Germany. It's still uncut, and it has a 16 rating. I was amazed at that.
Wow. Cool. Cool. You're Mr. Prepared. I like that. You're a bit like me at meetings, man. I always got there before you, folks. Got there before you. Good.
Yeah.
And recently, I've got a couple of projects at the moment that I've got to say in love with, but these are really dark. Really dark. There's nothing forgiving about them at all. One is called The Disassembled Man.
Okay.
And it's we're trying to cast at the moment in Los Angeles. Just before I talked to you, I talked to the producers and the casting agents to try and find a guy. We're looking for somebody in his early 30s who has no morals whatsoever. He kills his wife so he can get her father's fortune. I think it's actually a German company who are going to finance it. As far as I know, do you know Constantine Pictures?
Yeah, I know. They're one of the biggest German companies here.
Yeah,
They co-produced all the Resident Evil movies for Paul Anderson, for example.
because a couple of friends of mine have read the script and they said you're never going to get finance for this. But then I heard out from the producer. I heard from the producer in Los Angeles, or who's actually my manager as well, saying that Constantine are interested in the film, and I know they're very brave. I know they're a very brave company, and you'd need to be brave to finance this film. It's a wonderful script. It's a really good script, but it's incredibly edgy. And I think it could be a cult classic. I really do believe that. So we're casting at the moment. I'm really, really hoping that one happens. I'm going to go on a casting call tonight, LA time, about midnight my time, try and talk to a casting director about ideas I have, because it's not obvious who to cast. But I was inspired recently by Paramount made a mini series called Waco about the Waco thing, and they cast David Koresh, the leader of the Branch Davidians. Right? They cast a guy who's known as a pretty boy in films, Taylor Kitsch.
Oh yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
Yeah, but here he had a really ugly mullet haircut, right? And he was really thin and white and gaunt and unshaven. So he really embraced the idea of looking unattractive because, for once.
Yeah.
And he was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, surely there must be other actors out there like Zac Efron, who's always Mr. Good Looking and Mr. Baywatch and all that shit, right? Surely they would love to play something dark and make themselves look ugly. So that's the direction I'm going, trying to find out a bunch of young, like, Emile Hirsch, Zac Efron. These guys who are known as being good looking, but good actors, young actors, right? Maybe for once they might like to have a really bad haircut and spotty skin. And, who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
I always think back to the film Monster about with where Charlize Theron played and won an Oscar for.
Yeah, where she played the serial killer.
Yeah,
Eileen Wuornos, I think was her name. Yeah.
that's her. Yeah, and she is undoubtedly a very, very, very beautiful woman. I'm going dark again, man. Shit. Uh,
Yeah.
a very beautiful woman, but she just made herself go ugly for that film, and she won an Oscar for it. So hey, listen, whatever you think of the Oscars, good or bad, she got herself a very big award for that. So I'm trying to, with the casting director tonight, I'm going to talk in great detail about trying to get into those guys who are normally cast as good-looking guys. I mean, you're never going to get the likes of Brad Pitt or any of that, but a lesser actor like maybe Zac Efron, who's just coming out in something called the Iron Claw at the moment, I believe. And he's always cast as the good-looking fella. But maybe if we just give him a few little, mess up his face a little bit and have him unshaven, get him to lose and have a really bad haircut, who knows? He could do it because he's definitely a good enough actor. As is Emile Hirsch, he was good in Into the Wild. I thought he was great in that film. And these guys can do it. So that's the way I'm leaning tonight when I do that call.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great film.
I think that's always a good opportunity for an actor when they can explore that
Yeah,
other side.
yeah,
I mean, Daniel Radcliffe is somebody at the moment who's doing that. He's
yeah,
playing anything to just move away from that Harry Potter image and playing just weirdos and strange people and interesting characters and
yeah.
everything. And that's very rewarding.
I think I think unfortunately he's retired now, but Daniel Day-Lewis was the king of that. He wanted to get away. He wanted to get away from that British thing he was in. Like, what was the film he did years ago for? Oh God, it was quite a good film, but he played a upper stiff lip English guy. It was for Merchant Ivory film. He was very good, and he's one of his first films in Beautiful Laundrette. But he wanted to get away from all that English stuff and do sort of darker stuff, and he succeeded brilliantly at doing it. Especially with Paul Thomas Anderson, There Will Be Blood. It's just incredible stuff. So actors, I think, do embrace that challenge and that the challenge of doing something completely different. Try not to be the pretty boy or the pretty girl, and try and do something that's more authentic and more heartfelt. So that's what I'm hoping to do.
I read about some other projects that you were involved in. At one point, I found a mention of a film called Night that was supposed to
Yeah,
be Misha Barton was supposed to be in it.
yeah,
Um,
a brilliant script. The woman who wrote this script, I ended up marrying. So
Wow.
she's my wife now, you know. When I read the script, I just thought, wow, this is incredible. The story behind that film was Doug Liman was going to direct it.
Hmm.
And then a week after he said, I'll do it, he got asked to do Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Brad Pitt
Oh.
and Selena Jolie. So they went looking for another director, him and his producer, David Bardis, and Summit Entertainment were going to finance it.
Hmm.
And that was before Summit joined up with Lionsgate. Um, Basically, David Bardis, the producer on the film, David Bardis called my wife, who was the writer. Well, she wasn't my wife then, and said, "Listen, we unfortunately, Doug is going to go to do Mr. and Mrs. Smith. We need to find another director." He gave her 5 show reels of directors they liked. And a week later, he called her up and she said, "There's only one guy, and that's it. And that's Enda McCallion. His reel is just by far the best." And they go, "Great, we don't have to have a fight. That's exactly who we want too." So I was called into Summit Entertainment, and she was called in, and we met each other that day. And little did I know I'd end up marrying her 5 years later. And now she's still an exceptional film writer. Really, really good. I love that film so much. And here's some of the stories attached. We needed to have a young girl, and we were given casting tapes from all the usual suspects, Misha Barton, all the usual suspects back then. There was Hillary, or what they call Loman, or the one who's crazy, but crazy, which is fantastic. Mean Girls,
Oh, Lindsay Lohan.
Lindsay Lohan, yeah. All
Yeah.
those people we were given. But then, in the middle of it all, we were given this casting tape of this girl who was just extraordinary. And I fought for her so hard. She was 17 years of age. She was so gifted on this tape. I had to go and meet her, talk to her. I loved her so much. And I fought and I argued with Summit Entertainment, who were financing the film for 20 odd million. And they were like, "No, she's unheard of. She's unknown." It was Jennifer Lawrence.
Oh, okay.
They didn't go with her. They didn't go with her, man. Huh?
Damn.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
But then, so that was one. And then the next thing we find out is that Summit are not going to put money into the film anymore because they've decided to finance a little franchise called Twilight.
Hmm.
So they decided to go with Twilight, which made an awful lot of money for them, and they also
Yeah.
did the Hunger Games to Twilight, or Summit, and that film just didn't happen. Now I have told my wife, I told her just last week, I will make this film one day, even if I have to buy the rights back from whoever have them now. I
Hmm.
will make this film because it's a great film. It's a wonderful script.
Hmm.
So Night was one of the very first things I was attached to. I was offered that within 3 weeks of moving to Los Angeles. I was living in Paris prior to that. Then one day
Hmm.
I got to move to LA. So I moved to LA, and my agent got me that film in, and I got it. And just because Doug Liman had to pull out and needed a director quickly, I got attached to that. But I will make that film one day. You will see Night, directed by Enda McCallion, written
Hmm.
by Kirsten McCallion one day.
I hope I will see it soon.
Yeah, me too.
Definitely.
Here's the way I'd like it to happen. I'd like you to see the disassembled man next, and then then I have written 3 films that I really like. One is called Mad Nomad,
Hmm.
and one is do you remember the Bhopal gas leak in India in 1984? Union
No.
Union Carbide factory, a big American multinational company. Basically, there was a gas leak in their factory and it killed 50,000 people. It's
Hmm.
like, and even today, it happened in 1984, so it was 40 years, yeah. There are
Yeah.
still people with cancer. There are still women
Oh.
with miscarriages. Like, I'm in contact with a survivors group there, and also in contact with Friends of the Earth, Greenpeace, Amnesty International. In June 2023, teenage girls were having they would menstruate 5 to 10 times a month,
Hmm.
where
Wow.
other girls wouldn't menstruate at all. This is 2 generations later. It's still affecting these people, and it's so sick. So I've written this film that, again, I've got to say, anybody who's read it so far says, "Oh my God, you're so fucking dark, man. You're so dark." But what happened was so dark, man. It
Hmm.
really was. So it's like have you seen the series Chernobyl, which I think is fantastic?
Yeah,
Yeah,
familiar with it.
Chernobyl, I love that, but they didn't shy away from the truth, and in this case, every scene I've written in the film is based on an email I received from a survivor who was there that night. As a matter of fact, I made it less graphic, and that was hard for me to do. But I've had 4 people read it so far, and they go, "Oh Jesus, man, this is dark, 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 dark." Like it opens up. Everybody was blind from this gas. Everybody was blind, and it opens up with a man in a car driving through Bhopal, and he's got 2 pieces of gauze over his eyes to stop him. He's blind, and they're all bloody. And basically, he's driving a car up a street, obviously blind, and everybody on the street is blind. So he just mows them all down. And they go under his car, and you see spatter at the back his blood and guts and a trail of flesh, and that happened. People were driving around the streets in cars trying to get away, but everybody was blind. So if you're blind and you're driving, you know what happens. You just hit everything. And then cars start hitting each other, and people will start throwing their children over railway bridges in front of trains to try and save them, because it was a better option than dying of respiratory problems or blindness, And it was truly awful. So I'd like to do the disassembled man first, and then Bhopal, and then Night. That would be my dream for the next 5 to 8 years, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
That sounds good. I read something about another project called The Blue Boogaloo.
Yes.
That was supposed to be shot in Morocco, I think.
Yes. What happened there was, it's a script that I really liked that I'd written myself, a very low budget script. I went and shot a commercial once just outside of Rabat, and I stayed in this hotel that was back hasn't been changed since the 1970s, and it was the whole retro 70s thing is very fashionable in this day and age, but this was real, authentic 70s. I had written the film to be set in the 70s in that hotel, and just when I had finished writing it, and it was all going to be shot in the hotel or out in the pool, so it was a cheap film. Could be done for $2 million easily, but some Canadian company had moved in, bought the hotel, and updated it all to like 2010. They ripped out the most incredible stuff. Where they put it, God, they'd probably just dumped it all, But all of a sudden, my hotel, my favorite hotel in the entire world, had just been ransacked, and insensitivity. Let's make it like every other hotel in the world, So the Blue Boogaloo went, and it made me very sad. But no, I can just laugh at it because, hey, it was meant to be. That's the way it was meant to be.
Yeah, but still, it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, it is unfortunate because this place it should have been protected, man. It was a gem. It should have been protected. It should have been protected,
Yeah, and if you had managed to make your film, then at least we would have the impression of, the place captured on film in a narrative. I mean,
we were using the 70s stock. We were going to make it look so 70s, to like something like a Scorsese film from the 70s, like Mean Streets. It was a thriller that I'd written, all set in this hotel, and it was kind of fun. I liked it a lot, I then developed the idea into this film I told you about, Mad Nomad, that I've written. And essentially the idea is very simple. It's about a man who stops another man from committing suicide. And there's an old Chinese parable that says, if you stop someone from committing suicide, you must be responsible for the rest of that man's days, because otherwise he shouldn't be alive. You stopped him. And it's about, for want of a better word, our good guy having to go out and kill the man whose life he saved, because the guy has caused so much chaos in his life. Saying, hey, this wouldn't happen if you just had me jump that night. You're responsible for everything I do now, everything. So our good guy says, shit, man, I've got to get rid of this guy, So he has to go out and kill the man whose life he saved. That's essentially the crux of the story.
Oh, that sounds interesting too, but also very dark again.
Dark, with a heavy morals in there. Like how do you kill somebody when fundamentally you're not made of that? That is not what you're made of, So there's a big moral dilemma the whole way through the film, And it's dark again, but Christian, I can't deny a certain part of me is dark, It's not something I'm willing to let go of, I mean, if you ask me to write a short story, I immediately go into and think, okay, who died? How many car crashes were there? how many stitches did they have in their eyeball? You know, that's the way my mind thinks. Not all the time. Now, if, for example, I mean, I've made happy, fun commercials, which I've enjoyed doing, and they've been very successful for both me and client and agency, and I've enjoyed doing them, you know. So I can be happy. Well, I am happy. I'm happy in my so there's no other way to be. I mean, listen, I wake up every morning, I've got a choice. I can either say I hate the world, everybody's an asshole, or I can get up and say, hey, I'm going to enjoy myself today, and I am. This morning I got up and I practiced an hour on my piano. I play, do you know the pedal steel, yeah, I'm learning that at the moment. It's a real beast. Because there's foot pedals and knee levers that change tones, half a tone up, half a tone down. I'm learning that, and the cello, which is another beast. So I've been putting a lot of practice in that, and that keeps me happy. It's almost like a form of meditation for me. I'm doing this with you, and then I'll have dinner, and then I get on a conference call tonight about casting the disassembled man. And I refuse to let my dark side take over my life. At some point, you know, life's short.
And there's also obviously a difference between just the everyday life stuff and the personality and the artistic leanings. I mean, there's a lot of people a lot of horror film directors, horror writers, and everything, who have a way of exploring that through their work, and that doesn't affect their everyday life.
Absolutely. I mean, a very good friend of mine, I would consider one of the a guy called Chris Cunningham.
Oh yeah, I've seen some of his videos.
Yeah, Aphex Twin and stuff like
that. Yeah.
He's just such a great fun guy, you know. He really is, but his work is so dark, you know.
Yeah, I remember the video with the faces on the TV screens.
That's right. Yeah.
The FX Twin, and that's such a nightmarish video. I mean, that's a video that gives you the creeps.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And then he did another one after that called Window Licker with the black girls, the prostitute in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I remember that.
Everything is really dark, but Chris is just the greatest guy, man. You know, you want to go out and have fun with that guy for a night, he's the perfect candidate, you know? And again, it's this fine thing. Where does your life and art meet, or where do they not meet? How much is one relevant to the other? These questions are always there. And as long as I think I'm intelligent enough to actually separate me, you know, that I'm not going to go out and murder somebody tonight, you know, because I've got a slightly dark thinking, you know, then I think I've got that figured out that bit, you know.
No, and I didn't get the impression from what I've seen from you. Also, I got the impression, I mean, there's a through line, obviously, of dark stuff, but it's always connected with a certain fun element, something, just a dark humor, a kind of a, like an almost subversive, just like a joy of turning things upside down. Some of the commercials, but also Hit and Run. I mean, there's a very, very dark humor in Hit and Run.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like that word subversive. Subversive. I would agree that my work is subversive, not necessarily intentionally dark, but intentionally subversive. I like subversive. So that's the perfect word, I think, to sum up my work, you know, where I'm going with it, you know. You know, I think I mentioned to you in an email about a music video I'm going to Utah to do with the rappers doing. It's quite a dangerous adventure, which I'm looking forward to, I must say. I mean, the guy is a hardcore criminal, you know. He's a gangster rapper, and he's a proper gangster. I mean, he's under house arrest at the moment. He's wearing an anklet and monitored by the cops. He can't leave his house in Utah. We have to go to him. He's incredibly successful. He releases a song a day.
Wow.
In his home studios, and every single one of these songs gets at least 200 million views on YouTube. He's huge. He's really huge. And I'm not supposed to say too much about it, but his name is NBA Youngboy, and the NBA stands for Never Broke Again.
Okay.
Never Broke Again Youngboy. That's his name. And you know, I'm not supposed to be saying anything about it, but I'm saying something. So there it said, NBA Youngboy, and he's a pretty interesting character. So a trip to Utah might be on the card starting next week. There's no idea. I have to get out there. We have to shoot within 100 yards of his house, 100 meters of his house. We're not allowed to go. Otherwise, his bracelet starts to go beep 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 beep, and we'll have cops and helicopters landing on his grounds. You know, he lives in a huge mansion. He's got all the usual gangster stuff like the cars, the Lamborghinis, the Ferraris, all that shit. You know, and he carries AK-47s around with him everywhere and Uzis around with him everywhere, and it's kind of like I say, it's all bark and no bite. But if he hears me saying this, he might shoot me. So, young boy, try to shoot me, motherfucker.
Yeah, well, they have an image to uphold, so I guess.
Yeah. Oh, don't shoot me. Don't shoot me. No, of course they have an image to uphold, and his is like, he fits into that whole. He's out of Louisiana. These incredible cars he has, he can't go anywhere on them, you know.
How did you find him, or were you hired to do the video?
I've been very lucky. I have a very good agent and a very good manager in Los Angeles. And it was my manager who found out about this guy and said, "Oh, I have." Apparently, he's very difficult to work with, and my manager has seen me work with some difficult actors in the past. And I don't know if it's the right approach, but I'm not very tolerant of egos, to be honest with, especially with actors, especially with female actors who don't think they're comfortable behind the car driving, or they can't act and drive a car for real. My wife, go away, sweetheart. Because it is kind of tough to change gears and act, drive and watch the road and stuff. And I like to do it for real. I really like to, but I've had actually, oh, this is too much pressure. Oh, I don't think I look very good. All that stuff, you know. I'm going like, would you just shut up and do it, you know? And here's the problem, right? You know, when you go to work and try and get a film, invariably you're in there for 5 months before anybody is hired, and you're arguing and you're fighting and you're sweating bullets to try and win this job, right? So I try to work with the same cameraman, the same production designer, the same editor, all the things. They know me and I know them, right? But if you get onto a set and people are making problems for you after you've been through so much to get there in the first place, and it is a lot of hard work working with studio executives, you know. I mean, these guys are hired from business schools like Harvard School of Business, not from an artistic background, you know, or Northwest of Commerce, you know. That's where executives come from. It's money, it's dollars, you know. So, you know, dealing with that when you come from a different background can be tough, but I'm getting more and more aware that I have to adjust my thinking a little bit for them if I want to make the film. But then if you get on a set after all this hard slogging work and people are making your life deliberately difficult, I've got to tell you, on Hit and Run, that film was shot in Baltimore, was a demoralizing experience. I got death threats sent to my hotel.
What? Wow.
Yeah.
Why was that?
And then one night we went to a strip club and I was attacked. I was physically attacked by a bunch, wait for this, cross-dressers. So it basically was like a bunch of guys dressed up as women, attacked by 10 of them. Right? But they had the power of men, but they were dressed as women, you know?
Okay.
It was an insane night. And I was there with my stunt crew, and stunt men are always trained in martial arts and stuff. So we managed to deal with the situation physically, but it was still and then I got back that night to my hotel and there was a death threat written to me. You know, if we see you out again in the streets of Baltimore, you will be shot. Then all the tires on all our vehicles were slashed.
Wow, that's crazy.
It got completely out of hand, all because one person from the crew decided to spread this poisonous attitude amongst everybody, right? And my deep French, I speak French, and I normally, if I want something done really quickly and he isn't grasping English, I'll translate or I'll help him. And the guy, basically it was his gaffer, and his gaffer start giving him just really childish shit back because of his accent and stuff like that. And I wasn't going to tolerate that, man. You know, I just thought it was like, if you're going to attack somebody like this, at least attack them in a way that's not just like, oh, I don't understand your frog accent. So I told the guy to get the fuck off the set. I said I said to Bruce, either he goes or I go. So in case, maybe that's my ego coming through. I know they're not going to get rid of me because I'm directing the movie. So he gets really pissed off. He starts telling people. They found out he was responsible for slashing the tires. He was responsible for the death threat. And it just got nasty. But I can't work with people like that, Christian, you know? I just
Yeah.
can't. These are people who are just trying to spread like a venom amongst the crew
Yeah.
and negative attitude where all you want to do is make a movie, man. And
Yeah.
every day you have to be up earlier than everybody. Every day you get to bed later than everybody. Every morning. Hey, listen, I'm not going to cry wolf. It's a great job. I'm very lucky. It pays really
Mm.
well. I've had great experience. I've traveled the world, you know, and there's been so many benefits to it. So I'm not going to go, I hate my job. It's not like that at all. I love it.
Mm.
But it's highly pressurized,
Yeah.
and you are answerable at the end of the day for the finished product. When everybody goes away and on to other jobs, I'm sat in the editing room with executives coming and going, no, change that. No, don't like that. No, change this. No, that's not going to get an MPG 13. No, that's not going to get an R. I'm the one who's there, and I'm very
Mm.
aware of that. So I realize that it's on my shoulders,
Mm.
and I will again have to fight. I mean, the problem is how hard am I willing to? Sometimes I overstep the mark, and I'm spilling the shit on myself here because I do it, you know. But it's important that I realize sometimes I overstep the mark, and sometimes
Mm.
I get a little difficult about it, and sometimes I can get unreasonable about it, and sometimes I can also get very egotistic about it. Like I'm the director, I'm the guy who hired you. You pay your mortgage when I decide you work. That kind of shit, which is just out of order. It's not right, you know. That's not right to
Mm.
have that attitude, and you get nowhere with that. So, you know, in sobriety, which I've now have 24 years off, I've been readjusting my character big time, and I have to, you know, evaluate these people around me and realize what they're bringing. I can't make the film without these people. It's impossible. So
Mm.
I and encourage them and embrace them as opposed to sort of chasing them away from me or using my ego to say I'm more important than you. Because at the end of the day, I'm not.
Mm.
But when you know the buck starts and ends with you have to somehow try and protect it. But you know, I'm sure some directors, like people I admire, like Hal Roach, way back in the day, he was able to deal with until they thought he was a communist and they kicked him out of Hollywood. I mean, how does Scorsese deal with it? I don't know, through respect for constantly making great films. Although I didn't like Killers of the Flower Moon,
Mm.
but all these other stuff I adore. You know, William Friedkin, another film director who died away recently, great
Mm.
filmmaker, was an impossible man to work with, but he managed to navigate it. So, you know, it is possible.
Yeah,
It is
definitely.
be understanding and not be an asshole.
Yeah, I mean it's a difficult process, I think, and it's different for everybody, I guess. Always depending on the circumstances and
Yeah,
the people that you're working with and the project that you're working on and yeah, the vision that you're trying to get across and that you're trying to protect. And I mean there's so many variables and
yeah,
I mean yes, you have to fight for what you're trying to do, and at the same time, like you say, the people who finance everything, the people who ultimately make it possible for you to do your work, they're part of the process too, and it's sort of a balancing act, I guess.
God, you're making so much sense to me right now. Yeah, no, but the thing is, you're absolutely right as well, Christian. You know, you're 100% correct. You know, yeah, they are a crucial cog in the process, and for me, just you know, to diss them and say, "Nah, nah, get the fuck away from me," it just isn't right. It's not going to work. I won't get the film made.
Mm.
But they have to be engaged, and it's just what manner. How do you engage these people? Do you do it aggressively, or do you do it with a sense of understanding? And I'm beginning to slowly but surely going towards the understanding as opposed to the aggressivity, but you know, the aggression. So it's
Mm.
working okay.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess it's better when you can sort of talk to people and sort of see their side and try to talk to them
Yeah,
in words that they can sort of understand and they can deal with. And obviously, like you say, people who are businessmen don't come from the creative side, so they have different priorities, they have
yeah,
different ways of seeing stuff, and that's always a big problem when the creatives and the money people talk to each other. They're talking about two different things, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, it's always it's a difficult process, but trying to find out just how to translate that into something that the other side will or can work with. I think it's the most productive way. I don't know if it's always possible, but
One of the things I really like to do, Christian, is to give the people I work closest with, again, my cameraman, my production designer, give them a lot of freedom. I'll say to them,
Hmm.
design me something that will blow my mind. And I will absolutely be open to that, you know?
Hmm.
But these are people I've worked with continuously for 20 years and I know everything about them. And it's easier to work with those people, you know, because we're friends. We hang out, we meet.
Hmm.
A lot of them are in France. The most talented people I work with are in France, some in London. But I'll go and meet them and hang out with them, you know, because they're friends, you know. And it's good to give them some leeway to say, "Come on, surprise me, give me something, show me something." But there's very few people I'll do that to. Very few.
Hmm.
Give somebody enough rope, they'll hang you, you know.
Hmm. I mean, with people, when you work with them a couple of times and you develop a kind of language and a sort
Yeah,
of a shorthand
yeah.
also, and a trust, obviously, um, I think that's really what you can do your best work because you can sort of not worry about that aspect of the film. You
Yeah,
can.
oh, absolutely. Yeah. When it comes to the cinematography of my films, I do not even have to think twice about it. You know, I work with a guy called two guys. One guy called Olivier Kokol. There's a very good German DP. I work with a guy called Franz Lustig, very a
Hmm.
young cameraman, very talented. And then in London, a guy called Dan Landon, who's just fantastic. He shot inside my or the skin inside my Jonathan Glazer film.
Hmm.
He's a very gifted cameraman. So when those guys come on board, you don't even have to think twice about the cinematography. You just talk to them about what you're looking for, talk to them about the general tone of the film, show them references, photographs, photographers you like, and then they come back with stuff and suggest things. And then that's easy. It's a shorthand. That's what you want. It's ideal, you know.
Hmm. Dan Linton, wasn't he the DP on the Judderman commercial for you?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Mm, okay.
What we did for that, and it was really interesting, was the advertising agency asked three different directors to come in and pitch that idea. But the agency in London were one of the most incredible agencies whereby they would give you very little information about something, right? And they'd let you come back with ideas to them. You have to develop the entire thing. And one of the directing team was Junet and Caro.
Hmm.
Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who did Delicatessen and the City Lodge, they came back with a very heavy CG post-production thing. And then Spike Jones was the other one. I don't know what he came up with. Mine was to go back to early cinema, like hand crank cameras, everything done in camera, the dissolves, the mixes, the effects, stop frame animation, right? And so we actually went to Araflex in Munich and we got cameras that were still existed from the 30s. We still had,
Mm.
you know, so they don't exist anymore. Unfortunately, in the digital age, you can't create that anymore. But we managed to get the last one that existed in Germany. We shipped it off to Budapest, where we shot it all. And the great thing about those cameras was when you're hand cranking, your hand gets tired. It slows down, but the film gets faster. There's no
Hmm.
rolling it, so there's loads and loads and loads of little, not mistakes, but little idiosyncrasies that happen. And there's something you can't get with a normal camera. There are little things that happen as a result of the technology you're using, you know. So
Hmm.
the agency were very brave insofar as, like, if I wanted to do a dissolve, I would shoot the shot. We would rewind the film in the camera back 25 frames, and we'd
Hmm.
double. Oh, that's just there was no way you could separate that in post production. It's already on the negative.
Mm. Wow.
They were very brave to do that. Let us do that, you
Mm.
know. And I had a lot of fun doing that. And that job got me a lot of work, a lot of work, a lot of music video work, a lot of awards, a lot of attention. And yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the oddest commercials that I've ever seen. It has such a specific look and such a just the atmosphere of it is I think really creepy and very it's even it's hard to describe actually. And actually it's again when we're talking about subversive, I mean it's you're sort of making a commercial for a product where the company would sort of be okay with the fact that you're selling something that means you're being lured into the woods by a monster and then you will be turned into a puppet.
Yeah, it feels,
So,
you know. I remember describing that character to the agent as somebody who collects people's souls, and they were like, "Yeah,
Hmm.
of that." It's like the same. I don't know if you remember a product called Tango Orange drinks, and they made great commercials.
No, I don't know them.
If you just look up Tango commercials London, and you'll see some of the maddest things. And this agency knew that Tango's biggest competition was Coca-Cola for soft drinks at the time, right? They knew there was no way they could compete financially or just in terms of exposure with Coca-Cola. So the client just said, "Go crazy. Get attention onto us." So the agency went crazy. And it was the same with Metz. The guy just said, we're dealing in a market that's ripe for these kind of drinks, and we don't quite have the budgets to keep up with some of the competition. So we need people to draw attention to ourselves. So
Mm.
they were willing to go with it, and I was willing to go with them. We were all willing to go, so it was fun. And yeah, it is hard to pinpoint exactly how to describe it, but what I will say, and it's another little feather in my cap, for many, many years, BBC Two did a competition, but the scariest moments ever on British TV. And that commercial came fourth for 10 years in a row. So I thought that was cool that a commercial designed for teenagers would be the scariest thing I've seen on British TV for 10 years in a row. So yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah, cool, cool.
Was there ever talk about turning the Judderman into a feature film?
A lot of people have talked to me in Hollywood and in Los Angeles about using those techniques again. I'll tell you who was very interested, and this probably won't surprise you, was a woman called Denise Denovi, who was Tim Burton's producer.
Hmm.
Very interested in doing something with that character.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Uh,
can see that. I can
yeah.
see that.
And then she called me out once to do a film that Tim was going to produce, but that never happened either, like many things. But she was one who was really interested in developing something with a Judderman. The problem being that the Judderman belonged as a creative property, an intellectual property to the advertising agency, and they weren't really willing to let it go.
I see. It's interesting because it's such a it's a character of its own, and it kind of has like, I mean, the commercial is like a short film that introduces you to the character and this very strange fantasy world that he lives in, and it almost gives you the idea that there's more to tell, right? There's
Yeah,
something else that we can explore in this world.
yeah, no, absolutely. And then there are a number of 10-second commercials as well that went with it that were really good fun. I really enjoyed doing. They were kind of like they just popped on the screen, they popped off in 10 seconds, and they were kind of like tonal pieces. There was no real sense to them. It was just kind of a little bit of craziness for 10 seconds. And you go, what the hell was that? But they worked. They worked really well. Again, send those to you very easily. I got a lot to send to you, Christian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I've watched several of the commercials, whatever I could find online, but obviously not all of them can be found. I also tried to find that short film of yours. I saw a mention of that, Moonlighting. I think that's one of the early things that you did.
Honeymooning.
Honeymooning. Oh yeah, right.
That was essentially the film that got me started off. I made that in London for my master's and my master's course at the Royal College of Film. And at the time I wanted to be a little Fellini. So I basically took shots from 8.5, and I even brought it. The college that I went to also had a very good fashion department, and I brought the film up to a fashion designer and said, "Somebody make this exact hat that was in eight and a
Mhm.
half, and then put it on the actress." And I got the exact car that Polanski used in Cul-de-sac. So it was a pastiche of all my favorite moments in film, and then put together a little story about my brother when he got married. They were driving to the airport to go on their honeymoon, and their car broke down.
Mhm.
So for me, that was a big sort of a metaphor for their marriage. And so I decided to make a film about that. And I won a ton of short film festivals in France, Clermont-Ferrand, Deauville, Angers. I won a lot of, and then for some crazy reason, I thought that I could keep going in education. I want to do a PhD in film studies.
Mhm.
And my idea was to do 1 year in Paris and 1 year in NYU. And I started my PhD, and I was in my first year at La Femme in Paris. And one day, this huge man, like 2'8" walked in, this Armenian guy, and said, "Can I see Enda McCallion?" And I go, "Yeah, that's me." He says, "Like, what are you doing at college? You're stupid. Let me give you some work." And I go, "What kind of work can you give me?" He goes, "I produce commercials." He told me how much money he could give me for one day, and my eyes lit up. I went, "Oh, that's a lot of money." And sure enough, man, he gave me one commercial within a week, and then I was doing up to maybe 30 a year for him.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I didn't stop working for 10 years. I went to every continent in the world. I went the only countries in Europe I haven't been to is Norway and Greece. Don't know why, but I'll get there one day.
Mm-hmm.
Traveled all over South America, the Antarctica, the Arctic Circle. We went everywhere, and we did so much work. And great commercials are like the ultimate training ground. You have the money to say, "I want a helicopter, I want 2 drones." You get it all, and once you use these things, you realize then if you really need them or not. Which is true. And
Yeah.
say, "I want a helicopter, I want a helicopter." And very often you say it just because you've never used it before or you couldn't afford to use one before.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you use it, you go, it wasn't really that necessary. We could have done that with a crane, you know? So it's good to be able to use these and get them out of your system.
Mm-hmm.
So you realize then what is necessary and what's not necessary. And again, a simpler way to do something can often be like, for example, there's nothing more simple in my show than the Judderman. Everything is so handmade in that film. Everything.
Mm-hmm.
The costumes were all handmade. It's all stop frame animation, one frame at a time. Characters being tied to poles, strapped to poles, and moved their hands, just like one frame, another frame, uh, and that's the way it was done. It was all handmade.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized then, after all my cranes, after all my motion controls, my helicopters, and all my VHX, everything, that I still prefer the simple way of doing things.
But he also did one of the commercials, like one of the biggest commercials I think that were made, the golf tournament commercial.
Yeah,
It's the other end of the spectrum, right? I mean,
yeah,
with a huge crew and a lot of locations and a lot of people.
yeah, massive. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. It was huge, massive. And there's a very famous David Lean film called The Coal Miner's Daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and it was shot on a beach in Kerry, County Kerry in the south of Ireland. And I love this beach, so I shot the golfing scenes shot in Europe on that beach.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the film that David Lean did very well, so I almost did it shot for shot. And then on the last day there, this old man walked up to me and says, "You know that David Lean film, don't you?" And I go, "Yeah." "How do you know?" He said, "I was an extra on that film." He was like in his late 80s.
Wow.
"That man put the camera in exactly the same place as you did." And I said, "No, actually, it's the other way around. I put my camera in exactly the place he put his camera." But this guy had been there.
Wow.
It was fantastic. Yeah. I love doing that piece. I love doing that job. It was not without its difficulties, but you know, it was the producers who deserved most of the kudos for that film, because we had to close down like the main street in Dublin, O'Connell Street, where you have the trams going through on 5 cross streets. They had to close all that down for me, right? It was so difficult. The traffic, the people were being held up, they were going crazy. I wanted 5 cameras up there. And they just made it all possible. So again, people made me look good on that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Good post production. I sent a second unit to New York to get the shots of Fifth Avenue. So they were just basic plates, and a great company in Paris called Buff Post Production Company. They laid in all the extras for me. A wonderful film who I have to give a shout out to, Stefan Serratti, who got nominated for an Oscar the other day for Guardian of the Galaxy 3. Great,
Mm-hmm.
great. He's now head of post production in Marvel Studios, but he was the head of post production in Buff in 2002 when I did that. He did all that work for me. He's just an amazing talent, and somebody I'll be working with again soon. So bravo, Stefan, bravo to un génie, monsieur.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I noticed you put your name into the
Oh,
commercial, Sir Enda, the freight ship, and
yeah, and then the
in the
bar.
bar, yeah, McCallion. Um, and he did that in other places too, like the Titty Twister bar in one of the
Yes,
car commercials. I think
yeah,
it was a Citroen, right? Which is
yeah.
the Enda bar.
And then at the end of a film, you have the end, and then a big A,
Oh yeah.
the end. You know, why not have a little fun?
Mm,
That's all it is. Yeah, I mean, I like to plaster my name over everything, but to get the end at the end of Hit and Run took enormous fights with the legal department at MGM. Oh, we don't normally do this. I go, well, I don't care what you normally do because my name is Enda and it's almost like end, and I can put an anarchy A coming in. It's a cool graphic and I want it. They're like, but we don't do that. And I go, well, you do now. And that's the kind of thing that gets me in trouble.
yeah,
But I'll keep fighting for it.
yeah.
No, I think it's a bit immature. The end with the anarchy A. It's a little immature. It's a little childish, to be honest. So I'll probably not bother fighting for that one again.
But still, I mean, it's those little touches that make a film or a project special. I mean, that's something where you can see that, it's that was a person that was working on it, and that was a person who had a certain idea that he was trying to communicate. It's
Yeah,
not done by a robot. It's not just done by, it's not just done for hire. It's somebody who's, I don't
yeah.
know, who takes the time to make it special.
Like my personal signature saying I approve of it.
Mm,
So maybe I will keep it up for things that I'm very proud of, and just
mm,
the end at the end. If I'm very proud, and that'll be my personal signature. Say, okay, I sign off on this project as something I'm proud of. Who knows?
mm. Yeah, we'll see with the next film.
The disassembled man. I hope
Yeah.
tonight. This conference call is going to be important. I don't know if anybody from Constantine in Germany are going to be on, but I certainly know the producers in the LA end are going to be on, and I know the writer of the novel who adapted his own screenplay is going to be.
Hmm.
So two very good casting directors. So we'll see.
Wow, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that everything moves along swiftly. One more thing, I found a mention of a novel that you wrote, but apparently that has not been released yet.
Well, it's called Black Blood, and it's got one of those self-release things on Amazon. Too easy to do. That's not really a publisher. But I do have a publisher looking at it right now. Again, that's something I talked about this morning to somebody in Los Angeles. I have a publisher looking at it, and
Hmm.
they like it. They like it. Again, maybe a little dark, but hey, I'm not going to get into that one again. But yeah, I decided one day. I mean, I love writing. I really like writing, and at the moment, I'm able to earn a living from writing in Ireland, where I am at the moment, where I enjoy being. Because I know you've been to LA a few times. It can fry my brain sometimes. It really.
Mm,
You know? And when you see things like established 1996. I remember my friend came from Dublin, who's a very, very accomplished filmmaker, a guy called Kieran Walsh. Um,
mhm.
I picked him up in the airport and I drove him into town. He said, "Listen, I've heard LA is such a trashy town, right? Can you just show me some examples?" And I go, "Okay." So we drove up La Cienega and we passed a tennis school called the Merchant of Tennis, or 1997. And he said to me, "Oh my God, you're joking me. They're taking Shakespeare and they're saying established 1990, the Merchant." And I go, "Yeah." And he said to me, "Okay, I love the Beatles. The Beatles played the Hollywood Bowl. Drive me to the Hollywood Bowl." So I drove him. It was only about 2 miles. We drove him to the Hollywood Bowl. And these big flashing neon signs were saying, "Tonight, the LA Philharmonic celebrate 50 years of Bugs Bunny." And that's what they're celebrate. Now, the LA Phil is a very good philharmonic. They have a very good conductor who does really, like, I went to see them play with Brian Eno, the guy from Talking Heads, David Bowie. They do really interesting programs. But he
Mhm.
decided to do 50 years of Bugs Bunny. And my friend literally turned around, went back to Dublin the next day. He said, "I can't stand the city." One in LA, one day. So that's yeah, I love being in Ireland at the moment. I'm with my family.
Mm,
It's cool. I babysat my parents through COVID, and they're all fine. And I will have to go back to LA. That's inevitable. That's where my work is. There's some work in Ireland. The Irish film industry is doing quite well. You probably saw in the nominations the other day.
Mm-hmm.
The Poor Things got 11 nominations from an Irish production company called Element Films. That
Mm-hmm.
and Cillian Murphy, of course, got Oppenheimer Best Actor. So there's 12 nominations from Ireland this year, which is not bad. Last year there was 15. So the Irish film industry is on the way up. However, I see my films as being more international than local,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not really a very local writer, an Irish writer. I have written
Mm-hmm.
a film called Once Upon a Time in Ireland that brings you back from, you know, the how Ireland actually first created as a chunk of ice that broke away from, the right up to the future. All that in 120 pages, which I really like, and some people like. That's about as Irish as I could possibly get. Everything else, I prefer to write about the Bhopal thing because it's really gripping, and there's a lot of injustice involved. With that, for example, I was put in contact by Amnesty International with an executive who was on the board in 1984, who's still alive. He was 37, and now he's 77, and he's living in North Carolina. And I sent him an email, and his name is Warren Woomer. And I said, would you be willing to talk about it? He said, I am so mortified by what happened. I will gladly be a whistleblower.
Wow.
And the first thing he said to me was when news came in, they were all sitting in their headquarters, Union Carbide headquarters in Danbury, Connecticut, the day they got the news that there had been a gas leak. And immediately 18,000 people were dead. And this guy, Warren Woomer, the executive who's still alive, said to the CEO of the company, can I please advise you, sir, not to take the private jet because that would not look good. And the CEO said, you think I'm going to fly the whole way to Bhopal on a commercial? Fuck you. That's what he said to him. And I put that in the film. That's the kind of thing. That's the kind of shit that went on.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And then
Wow.
the CEO died. He went on the run because the FBI were trying to extradite him back. But in his 80s, him and his wife went on the run, started hiding from the FBI. So you can imagine an 80-year-old couple on the run. It's insane. It's insane. So there's a
It
lot
is.
of great stuff in the story. And then after he died, he was paid, they sold the company and he was worth $9 billion.
Wow.
And the people in Bhopal to this day have nothing. Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're still dying of like cancer, thyroid problems. They got nothing.
Mhm.
And then after his death, his wife was invited on to CNN. Anderson Cooper interviewed her, and she said, my life has been hell since that
Yeah.
since disaster. She said, we have been ostracized by everybody. She said, people won't even cater my parties. I have to cater my own parties now.
A very poor woman indeed.
And Anderson Cooper was bright enough to say, oh, you poor woman. Have you ever thought about the people in
Mhm.
Bhopal who are still drinking toxic water to this day because of what your husband's company did? And she said, I don't want to talk about that anymore. That's a long time ago.
Insane. I'm thinking of Ken Lay, the guy, the Enron
Oh,
CEO, who then,
oh
what was the quote? My wife and I are down to our last $20 million.
yeah. Uh,
Poor guy, right? I mean,
it's
I really feel for him.
like my assistant director, who I work with a lot in America, his brother was lost in that terrible thing, Katrina, in New York.
Hmm.
Brother was lost. He's never been found. And I was with him in Greenville, North Carolina, shooting a commercial the day. Barbara Bush, who's now dead, said, what are these people complaining about? They had nothing in the first place. So what are they looking for? These are animals. These people are just animals.
Mm.
But she's dead now, so whatever. But
Yeah.
George Bush is not dead. I'm not going to get into politics. No, no. There's so much shit on the world between Gaza and Ukraine. I went to Gaza once and I built a school. You know that?
Oh, wow.
I went to the Jerusalem Film Festival once, and a friend of mine from New York, a Jewish guy called BZ Goldberg, had been making an ongoing documentary about. He started off with a Palestinian kid who was 3 years of age in the Gaza Strip, and Israeli kid, 3 years of age, in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been documenting them every year from the age of 3, and they were now in their 20s. And they starts off with them as a 4-year-old spitting in each other's face because they were told by their parents to spit in each other's face. And now they were friends. So Beezy was going over to film the Palestinian kid in the Gaza Strip, and Bill Gates had donated 100 computers to the refugees out there. The guy, one of the people in the Gaza Strip, right, he basically had applied 26 times to the Israelis for planning permission. He never received an answer, not once. And when all these computers arrived from Bill Gates, he said, to hell with them, I'm just going to build the school. So my friend and I had to climb into the boot of Beezy's car to cross the border into Gaza. And when we got there, we helped build the school. Now, this was not hard labor. These were light blocks, right? But the entire time we were building, helicopters are flying overhead. The Israeli army were driving by. They were checking up on everything. And the Palestinian guy, we stayed in his home. He played his Palestinian music. He gave us Palestinian food. And there is a connection between the Palestinians and the Irish, it used to be Yasser Arafat loved the Northern Irish struggle against the British, And I actually met Yasser Arafat once in Rome. A little side story. We were both staying in the same hotel, the Excelsior Hotel, and he was there. So that was fun. But we went over, we built the school, and the Palestinian man said to us, just watch. The minute we finish this, a bulldozer will come in and knock it down. We finished it on a Sunday night. On the Monday morning, we got a phone call to say that the Israelis had sent in bulldozers and not only but all the computers to smash to pieces.
Oh man.
Like really bad. And but the story gets a bit more crazy after them because it was the Jerusalem Film Festival. Benjamin Netanyahu was then the mayor of Jerusalem, and he decided to have a party at his house. So we all turned up to his house, and he got on the balcony and he looked out at the crowd in his garden. He said, "Oh my God, look how many people! It looks like I'll have to get the bulldozers out again to knock down the back wall and extend the garden." And everybody booed him, right? Booed the man. And it was back in the 90s, and I was still drinking at the time. My friend and I went into his house, and we saw original Picassos on the wall. We saw an original Gustav Klimt and another Edvard Munch on the wall. So my friend and I decided we hated Netanyahu so much we'd rip a Picasso off the wall and try to steal it. We were caught by bodyguards and thrown into a prison. We were kept in there for just one night, and we got back out again. And we were on the front page of the Jerusalem Post. 2 Irish guys tried to rob Netanyahu's priceless Picasso. It was from his blue period or whatever, right? So we were on the front page. They got in contact with the Irish embassy in Tel Aviv, who basically set us out, told us to stop messing around. 4 days later, my short film won the Jerusalem Film Festival, and the same newspaper wanted to interview me. I go, oh, isn't it funny that you had me in the front page as trying to steal Netanyahu's Picasso, and here I am being interviewed. So I used it as an excuse to put up, tell them the story about the school. Knocked down. And they didn't want to publish it. And I go, well, listen, in that case, I'm not coming to do the interview with you, because I just thought the chance of, that angered me. I just think it angered me,
Yeah.
But I'm not getting into politics, Christian. And if I start getting into politics and getting angry, it's going to be nothing to do with your podcast, nothing to do with film, and it's going to put me in a bad mood. So